They're just now leaving the keynote.
Yeah, I'll give them about 5 minutes to show up. Okay. Interesting. Ba-ba-bum. So I should probably tilt that slightly. Okay. Tilt slightly. See if I can tilt this a bit. No, it needs to be more like that. Huh.
Here's the whole branches thing. Do they want us to help them understand how to optimize their branches? It's the same. We're not dealing with it. But is there described in here? No, go ahead. No, you described in their branches. Just because they have them. Just because they have them. Okay. That's one of the things Will does. Is his first part of that thing is telling them what they already know about themselves.
That works out pretty well.
Focus on why we're here.
Okay.
Why am I even providing
We're here.
Because they have these tools. They know they're valuable. They don't have to use them. That's what the most experience. That's insane. Yeah. It's a.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm going to wait about another 3 minutes here for more people to trickle in, but almost got a full house here anyway, so thank you very much. And by the way, I'm actually streaming this on Periscope. So if you go to the hashtag BPM, hashtag BPMCM15, you'll find my tweet with hashtag Periscope saying that my presentation is about to start. And there's a link to Periscope TV. If you click on that, you guys don't need to do that, but if you retweet that, then other people may click on that link and actually watch online. So Periscope is kind of a neat extension to Twitter.
Is there a limit time-wise, or can you stream the whole thing?
I can stream the whole thing as long as the client doesn't crap out. And then on, so they just so it's flaky, cool technology, early days. And I have, and it looks like I have one person is watching me right now. Whoever they are, hello. Okay. I think we're like I said, we're going to start 5 after, so about 2 minutes more, and then the show will begin. So, all right. Okay. I got kind of like a mirror here. This is showing me the. So this is what I'm looking at. So it's like a room. You're looking at yourselves. That just got streamed out, by the way. And now I'm seeing me, and I'm seeing the presentation. So cool. Well, whoever that one person is, thank you for bothering. Just about. All right. Do I have everything? Okay. I got some props here, and I got my little speaker, which I'll need at the end. And I'm going to just kind of stand right here. By the way, if you're interested in the quality or the lack of quality, it's not super high fidelity. If you click on that link yourself, you'll actually see this video stream of me at about 15 seconds lag. So you couldn't really use it like Skype to have a conversation. But very good. All righty. One more minute. And I don't have a complete 45-minute presentation, but it's jam-packed with stuff. So practice some up okay, great. Can you hear me in the back, Anne? Okay, great. So thank you for attending this session. Wearable Workflow Meets the Internet of Things in Healthcare, a meta presentation. I call this a meta presentation because this is a reprise of a keynote that I gave 4 months ago at the Healthcare Systems Process Improvement Conference in Orlando. And so that presentation was to 500 healthcare workflow quality improvement people. So you kind of put yourself in their shoes. So there are sections of this that are relatively simplistic, tutorial relative to workflow, but I'm kind of an evangelist for getting more business process mining and management and modeling and case management into healthcare. So the presentation I gave last year was kind of about how to productize BPM into healthcare. And this was a specific presentation that had to do with wearables information technology, which I think there's a wonderful intersection between that and BPM and healthcare. And that's what I'm going to talk about. So this presentation is a chapter in that book. And this was the slide from that presentation down in Orlando. So Wearable Workflow Needs Health Systems Engineering. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about Wearable Workflow in a moment, but here's the roadmap. By the way, I'm Wearflow, no W at the end if you want to tweet about this. And I'm going to talk about this idea of wearable workflow, then the relationship of wearable technology in the Internet of Things. I'll tell you whether I think Google Glass is dead or alive. And then I'm going to look into the future. And designing a curriculum is really a great way to look 10 years into the future. So I'm actually, since a lot of these people in the audience were educators from various industrial engineering programs focusing on healthcare. And then at the end, I've got a kind of a fun little personal project that instantiates a number of these ideas. Okay, obviously I'm talking to workflow people. They know a lot less about workflow management systems, business process management, adaptive case management systems than you, if they have even heard of it, which is interesting. And so I'm talking in very general terms about modeling and executing workflow, and the role of technology to make that better in healthcare. Lena, have a seat someplace. I think there's something over there. Oh, really? Oh, okay, another prop. Thank you very much. Thank you. That was I just showed a slide of that. Thank you very much, Lena, of BPM Books online on Twitter. So I am not above using cutesy techniques. So this is Mr. Wearable Workflow. He is a series of tasks consuming attention, achieving personal and professional goals, facilitated by workflow technology personified. Now we get more serious. I thought I invented the phrase wearable workflow. I was so proud of the phrase. And one day I idly Googled it thinking I'd find my stuff. And it turns out that 10 years ago, 20 million euros was spread over about a dozen companies and academic units studying wearable workflow. There were 4 use cases. One of them was healthcare. And it's called the Wear It at Work, if you want to look them up. And what they were trying to do was to eliminate the distinction between information processing, supporting a task, and the task itself. So if you're working on an engine or you're doing surgery, and then you stop and you go over to your laptop and you look something up, there's a big distinction. But let's say you're working on that patient or working on that engine, and all the data is somehow being calculated from your movement and assessments of what your goals are and being entered into the system. And it's presenting back to you peripherally exactly what you need to know when you need to know. So that's the example. And these folks felt that wearable computing would make workflow more straightforward, increase quality, and reduce idle time and waste. I love this phrase, wearlet. So you've heard of applets. Those are the little Java applets that ran in browsers. And then there's portlets. You construct maybe a patient portal out of Tinkertoy-like bits of software. Well, wearable workflow is a sequence of wearelets exchanging data. And you can think of a wearelet as kind of like a software abstraction around some hardware functionality. In dragging and dropping icons, you are setting up kind of the middleware engine that's controlling notifications, let's say, flowing to your wearables. Let's say you've got a smart ring, smart watch, Google Glass, phone. Imagine all those notifications and they all go off at once. So you need some way of contention management. And so you need some kind of intelligent workflow, filter, and prioritizing and cooperation between all these wearables to make it a good experience. I talk about 3 levels of wearable workflow. Intra-device. So I've got my Pebble here, and you have a set of micro interactions. You can think of those as workflow. Industrial engineers, again, that's who I'm talking to in this presentation 4 months ago. They have human factors specialists, and they study, down to tenths of a second clicks. Looking at usability engineering. Then you have device-to-device workflow. So you've got your Apple Watch, your phone, you get a notification, you pull out your phone, gesture recognizes you pulled out your phone, so it may open the email that you just got notified or play the video that you just got sent. And this is just a screen capture of some of the architecture that makes that kind of inter-device workflow on the Apple system possible. And then there's enterprise wearable workflow. And I'll use an example. So a couple of years ago, I was a Google Glass Explorer, worked with a local company, and we developed a Google Glass-based integration to a BPM in the cloud engine. And it was for hospital environmental services task management, basically housekeeping. So the supervisor would step off the elevator, look at a QR code. It would show a list of the rooms that have been cleaned. There's a QR code at the room. He looks at the QR code. It shows who was the last person to clean that room. He can ask for that room to be cleaned again, make a comment. And then the creepy thing was he could look at the employee, and it would do facial recognition and bring up their name, employment history, and the rooms that they just cleaned. And that's just a blow up of what you saw in Google Glass. And the company I worked with, which was Appian, they wrote some wrappers for Google Glass, and then I was the domain expert. I came in, they asked me questions for 2 hours. I came back a week later, and they demoed an application that worked perfectly. And so I said, how many hours do you think you spent on that? They said, probably 4 or 5 after we talked to you. And so I love that low-code, rapid, create, and test. And I think there's a wonderful fit between wearable technology, the Internet of Things, and that whole sort of low-code, let's work with the domain folks, create something really quickly, see if they like it, fix what they don't like, put it out there in a pilot situation, get that data back, use process mining to improve and to find the bottlenecks and to increase satisfaction. So you get your little smart ring, it goes just like that. You turn and you look at your watch, and it automatically shows you what it thinks is the task that you probably want to look at. And then it has some hard-coded responses, except maybe decline, dismiss. You might even be gesture-based, like no or yes. And then you've got customizable responses. Call me, on my way, cool, go Bears. And this is an example of actual notifications such as they are implemented on the Pebble Watch. I won't go into that detail, but it's the basic idea that you can create your own customizable responses to these notifications that arrive. Okay, cool. Internet of Things. There are some visual development environments out there for the Internet of Things that really remind me of business process management. So over here, we've got, in the lower left, we have a smart sock. And it can detect when you fall over. And so it sends some information as we go crawling up that little workflow, data flow diagram. It sends some information to the EMT service, and they make a call. And if they don't hear back from you, then it sends a text to the EMT, and it has a link. You click on the link, and it's a map that shows you where the smart sock is located. And so I think of that, and then I think of clinical protocols in a hospital and being able to use BPMN or the decision modeling and to be able to manage that in a graphical environment and to push that out to a variety of patient and provider wearable devices. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the relationship between wearable tech and the Internet of Things. Keep in mind that this was a keynote to 500 healthcare workflow improvement folks. It could have been a litany of headlines and use cases of wearable technology and information technology in healthcare. I just chose one because it illustrates an interesting pattern. There's an MIT startup that is embedding sensors and logic into soap dispensers, and they can tell when it's being used. And then the staff has a badge, and it communicates with the badge. And then when you walk up to a patient or you leave a patient, if it deduces that you haven't washed your hands, in either case, the badge will vibrate. Great for hand hygiene. You'd be surprised how difficult it is to get healthcare workers to wash their hands. So, once they got this out there, light bulbs start going off. Wait a minute, why don't we put these sensors in other places? Because they're talking to the badges. And what if the patients had these badges? Well, we could gather data on patient wait times, treatment patterns, and reveal all kinds of waste in the system. And then someone else said, why stop at that? If we have this in real time, if we detect a spike or a surge, we can set notifications to anybody that is idle and reallocate those resources. Well, in fact, that's where they're going. Now, here's the ironic, whimsical, but illustrative thing. This technology started as smart dog collars. And they just realized at some point that there just wasn't that big a demand or industry or economy for that. And so someone said, well, maybe we could use this for hand hygiene. I know someone at the hospital there in Massachusetts. And someone said, well, then wait a minute, we could generalize this to become a general workflow management support system for the patients and the providers. And they got $15 million of investment. And what's so interesting about this is you see that there's a generalization, there's a pivoting and a generalization. They pivoted from dog collars to hand hygiene, and then they generalized that to more general sorts of workflow support. And I think that this is sort of intrinsically part of the technology, this potential. And that's because of this. This is the Intel Curie, which isn't quite out yet. They're waiting for FCC approval. And it has an accelerometer, gyroscope, talks Bluetooth, and you can download a program to it, and it can run for months. And so it is literally the size of a button. You could wear it on a smock. You could drop it in your pocket. You could drop it in the potted plant at the intersection where everybody keeps going the wrong direction. You could sew it into the pad of a chair in the waiting room, and of course it would detect any time anybody sat on it. And you could gather all of this data. The difference between wearable technology and the Internet of Things is whether you're wearing it or not. And I frequently recommend open source software to the BPM, to the health, IT, and workflow improvement folks. And this is a great slide from one of their presentations in which they talk about smart objects. So smart object has four things. It has sensors, so you can detect vibration, changes in light, sound. It has actuators, so it can vibrate back and you can light an LED. You can put a little, remember that smart ring? We'll put a little set of characters someplace. It has connectivity. It can talk to things around it via Bluetooth and related frequencies. It can talk out to the cloud, to APIs in the cloud, and those can be programmed graphically. And then you have logic. All you have to do is change that logic to pivot and to generalize, which is why I said that this is sort of in this pivoting and generalizing is an intrinsic part of the technology. So the Internet of Things, wearable technology is the Internet of You. Okay, so now we're going to talk about Google Glass. Dead or alive, first of all, 2 years ago at this Healthcare Process Improvement Conference, I gave this presentation on Google Glass and healthcare workflow, and it was well received. Of course, that was in the upswing on the hype. Now, I did something kind of interesting. Over there on the left I have a screen which is showing what they are seeing. And so it says, thank you very, 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 very much, Amanda. It just transcribed what I was saying to her. And there's the audience. I'm hard to miss. I'm kind of bombastic. Now, on the consumer side, Google Glass got really bashed on the consumer side eventually. Issues of dorkiness, class, privacy. But I'll just tell you what I really liked about the consumer side. The hands-free email, just to me, was the killer app. In fact, second day I had it, I was walking across DuPont Circle here in D.C., and it was kind of an overcast day, and I heard a ding. And I looked up, and it automatically comes on, and my wife says, hello from Dulles, I'm heading off to Europe. And I said, that's fantastic. And then there's a little question mark with a little microphone that was pulsing. And I said, that's fantastic, dear. I'm answering with Google Glass, which is very convenient, completely hands-free anyway. Send me lots of pictures, love, truck. I could have swiped that and started over, but now she calls me truck every once in a while. That's a frequent mistake.
You hate the glasses.
I love it. Yeah. Well, I love the hands-free videography and photography. 5 a.m. in the morning, I'm driving from our family farm in northwest Illinois to the East Coast, and I get this iconic shot of all the different, it looks even nicer printed out, all the salmon and different colors there, and we get, and you see it's sort of blurry here. Well, that's because I'm driving at 55 miles an hour, and I just said, okay, Glass, take a picture. So, I'm a firm believer of the philosophy of science principle that you do not really understand something unless you can reproduce it, if you can create it. And to an engineer, that means you build something that does what you are trying to understand. And so I've built a lot of prototypes, none of them all the way to products, but it's great to network with the many startups that are still working on Google Glass, particularly in the healthcare sector. So this was my glass eye chart. It only worked for one eye. But it was really for developers to, when they hand it over to someone, they could say, well, what is the smallest font that I can understand or I can see? This was, okay, so we have rooms N1 through N3, S1 for S3. It's a medical clinic. We have Dr. Blue, Dr. Purple. Dr. Blue is in room S3. He's doing a history of present illness. He's been in the room for 13 minutes, so the asterisk means he's present. We've got the green is for nurses, so meds have been waiting for 1 minute. There's a new nurse in there. And all of this is changing dynamically. This data is being pulled out of the electronic health record. Now that has that kind of thing has extraordinary possibility for making workflows in hospitals much more efficient, especially with respect to electronic health records, which doctors don't like. In fact, several companies have gotten tens of millions of dollars, and they estimate that they can save, as much as a third of the time that doctors interact with electronic health records. Well, guess what? Doctors interact with electronic health records like half the time. So that's a pretty good chunk. Now, I have it on right now. I wear it in my pocket a lot now. When I got it in early 13, nobody knew what it was. I wore it 12 hours a day, which meant I had to charge it a couple times. And I loved it. It was really great. It was, and I had no fear, of a bad reaction. Then for 6 months, I had people who would see it from across the street, and they'd say, is that Google Glass? And they'd run across the street through traffic, and I did over 500 two-minute demos where I would just, I'd explain for 30 seconds how it worked, I hand it over to them, they'd interact with it. And then, of course, you have to realize, though, you can see why Google Glass made me fail. So there's my battery, and I chose this shirt because it had the biggest pocket. And so I can put up with this, but obviously that ain't going to fly on the consumer, fashion side. So we are here. We are in the trough of disillusionment with respect to Google Glass. But I am convinced, and there are a number of other companies that are working on Google Glass-like products, that we're going to climb up the slope of enlightenment to the plateau of productivity in probably 2016 or so.
Wow, that's too far.
Yeah, I know. Well, this stuff is... there's an interesting... let me interject here. If you search for Google Glass in healthcare, in like Google News, you don't really see anything past about January. And I'm hearing that Google Glass is hiring engineers for Glass like crazy. There's a program called Glass at Work. There are 10 companies. 5 of them are healthcare. 2 or 3 of the other ones all have healthcare in their portfolios. And folks are telling me that they have like really strong NDAs. Okay, so you're just not hearing. I'm convinced that there's a version 2 that's out there, but nobody's saying a word because they don't want to get kicked out of the program. Anyway, Glass is portrayed as a wonderment of miniaturization, and that is true as so far as it goes. It is a wonderment of miniaturization of off-the-shelf technology from 2010. Okay? And this little exotic microdisplay is like $3 or $5. It's been around industry for years. And so the cheapest teardown I saw was like $80. Now developers paid a lot more money for early access and for hand-holding. I mean, Google's kind of famous for not being able to get anybody on the phone. But if you had Google Glass, a human would answer you. This is like my 6th pair. They break, and they're really just, it's a prototype, not a product. That's the difference between Google Glass and Apple Watch. Apple Watch is a product. Google Glass is a prototype. You throw away the prototype, you start over. In fact, it's about the 150th prototype they did internally. Okay, this guy, Tom Chi, was the product manager. And he makes this interesting point, and that is if Google Glass can go to the electronics manufacturers, component manufacturers, and guarantee 100,000 units, they will custom design and shrink those individual components, and they will design them so they fit together in a closest packing structure up to 5 to 10 times smaller in volume than what we saw based on 2010 technology. Relative to battery life, which is a big Achilles heel, 4 hours I get of reasonable use. So they're working on microprocessors that sip energy twice as efficiently. They're working on batteries, new technology that have twice as much power per weight. Now, do I think that when it comes out it's going to be 4 times as long? No, but it's probably going to be twice as long because they're also the software is going to very, very, very selectively turn off everything that is consuming power. The software is going to be smarter in terms of use of power. And by the way, vote of confidence, Intel, largest CPU chip manufacturer in the world, hundreds of millions of dollars a year going into wearables, information, Internet of Things, will be supposedly inside the next Google Glass. So this is based on Texas Instruments. By the way, that's the Intel Edison, which I have a couple. Intel Edison is the size of a postage stamp, about the thickness of a quarter. It's a gigabyte of RAM, 4 gigs of storage, Wi-Fi, and Bluetooth, running Linux. Okay, so neat stuff. Okay, guess what? I'm convinced that the next, I may be wrong, but I think that the next version of Google Glass, I have no special knowledge about this, I don't have an NDA with anybody, is actually going to be embedded in glasses. Like big, old-fashioned, bulky plastic glasses, not the wireframe glasses. The displays have been embedded into eyeglass lenses for 20 years. This is not that exotic a technology. So, okay, I might wear that. It's not going to look, like this, with this big honking thing sticking out. You may prefer this, but of course this has a lot more volume. You just pour your battery into the arms. I've learned that these are the arms of the eyeglass frame. And so you shrink down those components, and I think it's actually going to be built into glasses. And since glasses can cost, $350, $400 already, it's not even going to, Google's going to make money off of something else, services, selling, whatever. I don't know how that's going to work, but it's going to be an interesting indirect business model. Okay, so now we're going to look into the future. And I used to be I designed the first undergraduate curriculum in medical informatics about 20 years ago. Curriculum is still online, held up remarkably well. When you design a curriculum, you have to look 10, 15 years into the future because you want your students to have durable and evolvable knowledge and skills. So I'm talking to these 500 health systems engineers at this conference, and a lot of them are educators. They're from various industrial engineering programs doing healthcare. And so I said, what if we were to design a curriculum based on wearable technology and Internet of Things? What would that look like? So I came up with 3 courses. And the first course is wearable human factors and workplace ergonomics. Ergonomics is kind of design, physical design of the workplace to make it efficient and safe and so forth. And I chose this voice. Survey of human sensory, motor, and cognitive abilities, healthcare workplace ergonomics, and patient fitness and monitoring opportunities relevant to the design and engineering of wearable workflow and software systems. Typical undergraduate course sounding. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but I will give you kind of my schema, and that's 3 dimensions. So along the left over here, we have anatomical location. So there's a directory out there with different classes of workflow technology, and they have like 140 locations, including ingestible and injectable, blah, blah, blah. All across the top here, we have sensory and effector modalities. So just like smart objects sense things and react back, we sense things and react back. So sensories, we have psychophysics, vibration, light, okay? Well, creating light, creating vibration consumes energy, okay? It's going to require different amounts of energy in a noisy, bright environment versus a dim, quiet environment. So your environments, your workplace environments would be the 3rd dimension. Data, process mining, wearable data. Okay, so you probably guys know these people, figures anyway. Frederick Taylor, Taylorism, he gets a bad name. He's the guy that studied, the shoveling. And I think what he did was sort of appropriate for the times. I think we're just, you have to understand that context. Frank and Lillian Galbraith, there's a movie called Cheaper by the Dozen. It's been done about 4 times. Best one is the one with Fred McMurray. I can't remember who the lady was. And they brought industrial engineering and workflow and efficiency to healthcare. In fact, when the nurse hands the forceps to the doctor, to the surgeon, at the right point, oriented in the right way without having to speak, just slaps it in his hand, that was based on research that they did observing how workflows in the operating room work. So let's now Frederick Taylor, he's doing time motion analysis. Now let's read this. Now I've used a different tone. You can tell I've been in academic politics and dealt with deans and so forth. And I've seen a lot of course descriptions. Imagine what Frederick Taylor and Frank and Lillian Galbraith could have done with time-stamped position and location data made possible today by workflow technology, or with patient-generated health data. This course seriously explores this hypothesis. So it sounds like a graduate course. I'd take that course. Okay, in healthcare, big data in healthcare is very nebulous. People are getting tired of it, the hype, and they start talking about actionable data. What we really want is to find the patterns and use those patterns in real time to drive all kinds of things. Well, guess what? Where the rubber meets the road in healthcare is work items on work lists for doctors, for nurses, for patients. And now these work lists can be automatically, you can have telephony systems that are, calling patients and asking them how they're feeling and reminding them about a wellness meeting that's scheduled and so forth. But I don't know if it would be called big workflow. By the way, if you Google big workflow, that phrase is out there. But I think that's the big wave that's going to come behind big data. And I think process mining is just this perfect fit. And I'm waving at Ann back there because of her tremendous presentation yesterday. And I actually did process mining back in 2008. We had 9 pediatric practices in a busy October, which is when the flu season, they're getting ready to go back to school. And so anyway, for those who weren't in her presentation, you've got a case ID, you've got these activities, get the patient, view the chart, current meds, you've got timestamps, and other information that allow you to slice and dice in various ways. And it generates these annotatable process maps. Well, when I did that, I was like the guy looking for his keys at night under the streetlight. I was looking right here. The keys might be over there under the bush in the dark, but I can't see them in there, so I can't look there, okay? So the timestamp data that's in electronic health records is just a tiny slice of what's happening in a healthcare organization or in the world at large. In wearable technology, basically, you're going from nighttime to daytime. You can now go look under the bush because that's where the keys are. That's where the interesting stuff is. So this timestamp data that is coming off of wearables and off of the Internet of Things, and especially the interaction between the wearables and the Internet of Things. So you're walking down the hall, and your wearable is talking to the wall. Okay, so you have these. So you're going to be able to track patients and look at those process models in terms of customer service, in terms of the treatment, the reason they're in the hospital, and so forth. Okay. Now, when I was an industrial engineer, I was really, really envious of the electrical engineers and the mechanical engineers because they were really building cool stuff. They were building robot arms. The electrical engineer was building the circuitry, how you control it. And I was doing like discrete event simulations and Markov models and, walking around. In that day, I was walking around in a medical clinic with a clipboard and a stopwatch. But today, any Joe or Josephine can be an electrical engineer, mechanical engineer who builds a cool robot or whatever. And that's, we were talking about to-do lists. Well, it's going to be the notifications hitting the wrist. It's going to be the data coming off the interactions between the wrist and the stuff that's in the wall. And you need gadgets. And you need to be able to prototype them. And so this is a hands-on lab course, semester-long hardware hackathon. I'll come back to that in a moment. You will learn to assemble and program inexpensive Arduino microprocessors and modules, create and print 3D models and combine into prototype wearable products. This is like $7, 8-bit processor, Arduino based. This is the same thing, smaller, talks Bluetooth. There are versions of this that will do cell phone data and versions that do Wi-Fi, $20. Now, if anybody here has heard of Little Bits, Little Bits is this a system for kids to prototype stuff, and this basically turns it into connections to the cloud with an API, so you can connect it up to if this then that or Zapier or whatever. And I basically, by the way, I have 65 Little Bits over here for building stuff. If anybody wants to go outside afterwards and do some prototyping. Hardware hackathon. They're amazing. You've probably heard of software hackathons. You go there Friday, you pitch some ideas, you form a group, and then you build an app. Okay, hardware hackathon, you have these boxes, and the boxes are full of microprocessors. Intel, Edison's, Samsung just came out with an Arctic system that looks pretty cool. Arduino, sensors, and there are 3D printers, because once you build something, when I say build, all wires and it's sensing and it's doing things, it's vibrating, you can't send it out into the world without enclosing it in some way to avoid prying eyes or saliva or sticky fingers or whatever. I mean, I work in a pediatric environment, so that's an issue. So here's kind of typical. You've got an idea, and then you use a breadboard. You stick these things here in the breadboard. You stick wires. You get it working various ways. One of these are microprocessors. The others are modules or effectors. Then you do a smaller version, so you can do a traveling roadshow, show it to investors. Then an even smaller version if you want to do the pilot. But this version has to be wrapped. So, for example, I'll show you in a moment. But this is like an example of a little 3D printed enclosure of a little project that I'm working on. I'll show you in a moment. And we're almost to the end. You don't have to start from scratch. There are all kinds of interesting hardware frameworks out there. This is a bracelet that you can plug LCDs and accelerometers and gyroscopes and cloud bits and Bluetooth and build stuff. And so now we're almost to the end. And so 2 or 3 years ago, I said, I want to master these things. Wearable technology, Internet of Things, open source hardware, 3D printing. And so how do you master it? You build. So you have to pick a project. Now, I've pivoted a bunch of times. So what I'm going to show you here isn't what I started out working on. And people invariably ask me along the way, they said, are you going to turn that into a product? Are you going to sell it? Are you going to open source that, build a community? What are you going to go on a Kickstarter? And so I've gotten interested in this prototype to product aspect. So next year I may be in Shenzhen, which is China, which is kind of the center for doing that kind of thing. Anyway, Mr. RIMP, M-R-R-I-M-P. In fact, this is like a small, I was exploring form factors. I'll show you them. Mr. RIMP, robot in my pocket. There's a little slot right here, so it can actually fit like that. So you can think of it as an interactive pocket protector. And so you stick it in here, and it's like you pull it out, and it goes, "Hello, Dr. Webster, thank you for taking me out of your pocket." It's got a little text-to-speech, okay? It's got a little screen that does animation. You'll see all that in a moment. This is really, really old. He's got a couple of hundred pediatricians and child life specialist people working in children's hospitals that are following him, who are waiting to be beta or alpha testers. And so now I will By the way, I'm Wearflow on Twitter, no W at the end. If you go to chuckwebster.com, there's a contact form. Chuckwebster.com. And so, how are we doing on time-wise? Okay. So, exactly right. So, what have we here? Well, I'm Chuck Webster, Wearflow on Twitter, W-A-R-E-F-L-O, and I'd like to introduce you to someone.
Hello, my name is Mr. Rip.
Very interesting. So, tell us a little bit more about you.
Mr. Rip stands for Robot in My Pocket.
Robot in My Pocket. There's a movie, I believe, with Andy Griffith called Angel in My Pocket, about an angel that lived in a pocket and helped families out of difficult circumstances. Mr. Rip is a 3D printed robot who's chock full of Arduino-compatible hardware, kind of like what's on my tie here. And he's highly customizable, so you can make him say anything you want. And he's for pediatricians and child life specialists to entertain and distract children in arduous circumstances. Kind of neat here, look. He even has a little laptop. And look, it's got an LCD screen and it's scrolling by and you can see what he's thinking. His little heart, of course, is going lub-dub. His mouth, his speaker is in the belly here. And he has these, cute...
Don't touch my hair.
He's got his hair. And, so anyway, we've been working on you really hard. And what's in the offing?
I plan to be at the National Maker Fair.
Going to be at the National Maker Fair. In fact, I think Saturday from about 11 to 2, we're going to be walking around. So if anybody sees someone wearing anything that looks like you, come on up and shake your hand.
Hello, my name is Mr. Rip.
And I've always wanted to have a conversation with a robot before, something about philosophy or consciousness or artificial intelligence. Do you have any interesting words of wisdom? Mr. Rip, you're so chatty normally. Hello?
Yes, what do you want?
Oh, okay, good.
All the world's a stage, and all the robots merely players. They have their exits and their entrances, and one robot in his head plays many parts.
Okay, I think I get your drift on that. Tell us a little bit more about your philosophy of life, or about you specifically.
I was created by a 3D printer.
Well, that's pretty cool, because 3D printing is pretty hot today. Anything else?
Don't worry if planning fails. There are 25 more letters in the alphabet.
It certainly describes how you've come into existence. I think you're about to plan Z.
I like snakes.
A little bit of coherent conversation would be appreciated.
I like snakes.
Okay, well, that's not exactly the literal sense of coherence that I meant.
I like snakes.
You've got to know something else, something kind of classy.
I'm bored. Can we talk about something else?
Okay, well, maybe. What do you want to talk about?
What am I? You're talking parody.
No, you're getting a little snarky here.
I was created by a 3D printer.
Okay, you're starting to repeat yourself.
I was created by a 3D printer.
And, okay, I think we're going to give you one more shot.
Don't worry if planning fails. There are 25 more letters in the alphabet. I'm bored.
I know you've got a great poem in there. Don't argue with me.
I'm bored.
Come on.
Can we talk about something else?
I'm going to keep after you until you say something
What
interesting.
am I? You're talking parody.
Okay, all right, well, one more time.
I like snakes. Some say the world will end in fire. Some say ice. From what I taste of desire I hold with those who favor fire. But if it had to perish twice, I think I know enough of hate to say that for destruction ice is also great and would suffice.
Okay, that's very classy. I think we're going to stop where we're headed. So, thank you very much.
Don't touch my hair.
Like I said, Mr. Rip is it's highly customizable. You can program to say whatever you want. And here was version, I'll turn it around this way. Here's version 1. And here it was version 2, which I could actually control with Google Glass. And you see all the wires on the back? Well, that's all enclosed, as you can see. And he lives in my pocket. Look, you can actually see that there's kind of a split there. You can think of him as an elaborate 3D printed pocket protector. He has a business card. And he has a Twitter account. MRRIMP. He's got a bunch of pediatricians and child life specialists at children's hospitals who follow him. And he even has a drone.
Yes, what do you want?
I'm sorry I blocked your vision there. And as you can see, his logo is, it's, the dots go right in the O's of the robot. It's got a little cockeyed grin, but that halo means he's really got a heart of gold. And so, robot in my pocket, Mr. Wimp. If you bump into us at the Makers Faire, stop and say hello and shake his hand.
Hello, my name is Mr. Rip.
I'll be glad to talk to you in the hall. I think I'm at the minute where I need to turn this podium over to the next person. So, thank you very much. And thank you out there.